Are you looking for the perfect rehydration drink to support your active lifestyle? Well, my friends, look no further than Hoist. Hoist is there for you whether you're going to use it pre-workout, in the middle of your workout in between sets, after workout, maybe if you're traveling, if you feel that dehydration headache sneaking up on you, or maybe if you just had a late night the night before and you need to reset and get back after it. With 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks with half the sugar and no high fructose corn syrup, no artificial preservatives, sweeteners, or dyes, Hoist is BPA free, it's kosher, and most importantly, it's made in the USA, baby. We all use Hoist, and I can't speak highly of it enough. Whether I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm out doing tactical operations, or I'm in the gym trying to make sure that I'm harder to kill, Hoist is always there to support me. With 5 delicious flavors you can pick up at your local grocery store or gas station. I love the dragon fruit, but you can try the orange, watermelon, peach mango, or strawberry lemonade. Hoist knows that you don't do normal things, and you might be out in the wilderness on a hunt, or you might be on a long ruck. Well, they hear you, and they've also got 3 delicious powder packs that you can mix in water anytime you want it. Peach mango, grape, and that fruit punch is that hitter for those packets. So go check them out. If you need IV level hydration for your normal every day-to-day activity, or if you're trying to get after it, working 2 workouts a day, Hoist is there to support you. Go check them out.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. Once again, we have a returning guest. We really appreciate you joining us, CMSAF Bass, CMSAF number 19. So round 2, it's been a little over a year since you joined us last. Appreciate you coming on again.
I am so excited to spend some time with you guys, Peaches. Aaron, very good to see you as well. Last time, though, I was in my own house, at the office in the house, and so it was a little bit different, a little bit more relaxed. Now I'm here at the Pentagon, so you guys get to see the office here. We can show the office here at the Pentagon. Anyway, lots of work to do here, but very excited to spend some time with y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Well, we were kind of rapping a little bit beforehand about, not actually rapping, but, chit-chatting, if you will, a little bit about standards. And I think that, I didn't want to waste that kind of conversation with just the 3 of us, because I think it's important for a lot of our listeners, either airmen that are already in or future airmen, to understand why standards are so important to us. So you had some really good points on it. So I want to kick it over to you, Chief, to start talking about standards right off the bat.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't think a trip goes by that I'm not flying back, by the way, with my team. And when we fly back, we have common practice where we debrief, right? We debrief every visit. We debrief every trip. What went well, what didn't, what are our takeaways, what's our homework, how can we really get after it for our airmen? But there's probably not a trip that goes by that we don't talk about standards. And in particular, right, if you could be with us on the C-21, it normally plays out where I'm looking at Diamond 1 and I'm like, do we teach standards anymore? And he's like, we do, Chief. We got 1-1. We teach it, BMT, tech training, and I say that in jest, but I think it's something that all of us have to own, right? This isn't, when it comes to standards, this isn't, hey, commander has to enforce, right? Or the first sergeant or somebody, right? Like, we all have to hold ourselves accountable to the standards, and we all know what they are, whether that's, functionally related or whether that's just, related to, Air Force standards, discipline, dress and appearance, all of those things. We all have to own that. And we know what right looks like. And so I think we need to get better with that. And I think, I don't like to compare our service with any other one because I'm a proud airman and I love being a United States Airman. But I will tell you, we can sometimes take a page out of somebody else's playbook when it comes to enforcing standards. And this is the dialogue I also have with my own husband. And you guys know, like, Ron served 27 years in the United States Army, retired as an Army first sergeant. And sometimes, he's dogging us out as airmen. He's like, you guys need to, get better at on-the-spot corrections and being able to provide those on-the-spot corrections and not take it personal, because we've got to be faithful in the small things in order to be given bigger things. And so I would offer, we've got some work to do when it comes to holding ourselves accountable and being able to provide on the spot corrections and not wait for somebody else to come by and address it.
Well said. It's Aaron, do you have anything on that real quick as I gather my thoughts?
Just an agreement, to be honest with you. And the spot corrections is a big thing for me. And I always, as I'm giving standards and expectations to my teams, at the flight level and now as the op soup, is one of the things that I say, it's become an ism of mine, is don't make me fix your problem. If this problem presents itself at my level, we're missing 4 levels in between there. We're missing the person that should be able to correct himself. We're missing that person's buddy, that wingman, that battle buddy that's next to him that should be able to go, hey, you're messed up. You got to fix yourself right now. Then you're missing that NCO somewhere in the middle that should be able to walk by and see this problem happening. And by the time it gets to the senior NCO level, like, that's not just a problem, that's a sickness, right? Like, that's a bunch of symptoms that are now together. So it's good to hear, you at your level, Chief, talking about that stuff, because we talk about it in the team room. I look at everybody, and one of the first thing I say is, hey, first line supervisors, staff sergeants, E5s, don't let something become my problem. Don't let this become a me problem, because this is really an us problem that we need to figure out. That's how you have a healthy culture.
Yeah. And don't pass your problem along, right? Like, we don't PCS people, to your point, on and pass the problem along. Like, we've got to handle it, which, I hear loud and clear. Y'all know me. I love to keep an ear to the ground. And what I hear and what I've seen for myself growing up is, right, you see sometimes the opposite, and you see how people don't address their problem and they just push it out. Even within, different formations of our own service, right? You see sometimes perhaps what we might think is a disparity. Man, I can't worry about what somebody else is not doing, right? Again, we can only control what we can control, and we have to focus on what we have control over. I can't fix, all of the Air Force's challenges on why people aren't holding their folks accountable, but we can address, what we control.
Yeah, and you mentioned one thing about the not taking it personally either. Like, it's not personal if we have to do a spot correction. It's like it's literally spot correction, and then it's gone out of my brain. I'm not thinking about it again. And that airman or whoever that is getting a spot correction shouldn't dwell on it either. Like, we've already forgotten about it. We've already moved on. There are bigger things to worry about. It's almost that broken window theory kind of going along. And then Aaron, you're right. Like, it shouldn't get to our level, right? And it definitely shouldn't get to CMSAF level. Right. But one of the discussion points, and Aaron, you brought it up in the team room, right, is with the aspect war pipeline in general. Like, there has been a lot of tumultuous talk about the standards in our pipeline. Are they required? Do they need to change? Should they change? And especially, we have, there's a lot of evolving things going on within our pipeline. So that's actually a really hot topic. So when you started right off the bat talking about standards, I'm like, yeah, this is what our community wants to hear and ensure that we are maintaining the standards. And I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Hey, you're about to pull 1,000 strings.
Right. Yeah. Just a simple question for the chief.
This is organic. I was at an event recently where it was focused on underrepresented groups and minorities. And in fact, it was a minority who asked a question and said, hey, Chief, we want your thoughts on standards. Specifically, when it comes to providing opportunity and or experience or promotion or whatever it is, right? Like, how do you think diversity fits into that? And they were talking about diversity of demographics. We can talk a little bit about diversity later if y'all want, because I definitely have some thoughts on it. And I think that we probably have, are overthinking diversity, right? Like, because it's not just demographics. But anyway, in this case, they were like, hey, do we promote somebody, do we promote somebody in the sense of they get an opportunity based on demographics? And I said, absolutely not. Right. We are a meritocracy. And and at the end of the day, if I ever knew that like I got picked for an award or an opportunity, a school promotion, whatever it is, because I'm a female and because I'm Asian, right? Like that is not what we do. We get picked because we've earned it, right? Based off of our merit. Like this is the United States military. We are, we're a meritocracy, we are a profession of arms. And so first and foremost that, but we're an organization that values the diversity of the force. And that diversity may be demographic, the diversity may be experiences, the diversity may be cognitive. All of those things matter. And when we can decide, how to diversify an organization, with the cognitive experiences and the demographic, and you can optimize your warfighting skills, that's what wins, right? So there's not a magic number either, right? Like I actually don't appreciate when they're like, hey, we need to have X amount of women, right? No, what makes your organization better, right? Like, and let's figure that out, and then let's figure out what it needs to be. But we can't forsake an opportunity. Everybody deserves an opportunity.
Right. It should be, equal opportunity, not equal outcome. And
Yeah.
I think that's what makes America great, like, is a melting pot of different people, right? It's everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. And when you have a melting pot of people, like everybody can play off of each other's strengths and weaknesses and pick up that slack. We shouldn't be going after a certain demographic. We shouldn't be going after a certain number. We need this number of whoever, right? It should be, hey, it's all based off of merit.
Yeah. But I will say again, I don't want what we're saying to get misconstrued. I think we have to provide those opportunities. We can't make any opportunities harder, right? We have to provide those opportunities because diversity makes us better. I'm so glad that back in 1996, that I was provided an opportunity to be able to get selected, after I went through kind of the interview piece, but being able to get selected to the 24 Special Tactics Squadron. I was the first female in operations there, right? And they didn't make it easy on me. Like, I mean, I was like, matter of fact, during the interview process, I was like, what in the hell am I getting into? I'm going to have to just go back to flight records and work, right? Like, but I'm so glad that I had an opportunity. That's all I needed. And then with that opportunity, I was like, when I got into ops, I'm like, man, they needed me. Like they needed that diverse thought, the diversity in who I was, my upbringing, to help just change and bring a different flavor to help optimize the effectiveness of ops in there. So, yeah.
Oh, 100%. And that's one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron, go for it.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, like, you bring up the best example of how it is that you can really open that aperture up. When you start bringing in, those CMS folks, when you start having, diversity in career fields, when you have diversity in life experiences, you have people that, no kidding, think completely differently than you do. And it helps you solve a problem you didn't know you had. So yeah. I think people get wrapped around the axle, and maybe it's because, the world we live in forces us to pick a side right away, right? And you have to be all into that side, and it's hard to think and speak with nuance. But when you start talking about diversity, everybody always, good on you for saying, hey, it doesn't equal demographics. It equals, differences in AFSCs and life experience and,
absolutely,
people that you grow up, or, just what you've seen. I don't know how many times I've been lucky enough to have, a radio troop walk up to me and go, hey, I know you guys are working this tactical problem, but have you ever thought about fixing it this way? And I hadn't, and it bettered me for that experience.
Yeah. That's a great example.
Yeah. Well, we'll shift from talking about standards, because this could be an all-day discussion.
This is an all-day. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
Chief actually has people that need her to be at work. Peaches and I, not so much. Like we have things we got to get through.
People don't really want us around.
Hey, this is good. I actually do have, they keep my stuff tight, but I'll tell you again, this is good. This is work. This is us having some like real dialogue, real talk, to a community who does so much for our United States Air Force and to our nation, that anything that we can do, if there's one thing said on your podcast, right, that can help make somebody better, or that they can say, hey, I actually disagree, and here's why, right? Like, dialogue is dialogue. I actually love any kind of dialogue. You know, it helps us again, as a whole. So this is work, and this is good work. I get to hang out and spend some time with you guys.
Would you say it's almost Airmen's time? I mean, how about that transition, huh?
Look at that transition. Peaches, you're so good at this.
That was a phenomenal transition. It absolutely is. Like, you know, I'll tell you, I appreciate you bringing that up, Peaches, because, you know, again, we're kind of in this, you know, you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. You know, me and the boss push out a message or a memo that is prescriptive, and everybody's like, oh, you know, they said it's got to be Thursday for 2 hours. And then we put one out that just gives intent, leadership intent. And people are like, we don't know what to do. Like, we wish they would have told us 2 hours a week. And we're like, absolutely not. This is called leadership. But let me share a little bit about kind of some of, you know, the discussions for Airmen's Time before it even came out. Again, you guys heard it before, right? I'm married to an Army guy. So I'm having dinner with the Browns, myself and Ron. And we were talking about, you know, some of the challenges that some of our airmen are having based on the communities that they're in, and how there really isn't enough time, so we hear, to be able to just connect, genuinely connect, and do things that they did. You know, when I joined our Air Force, you know, over 29 years ago, it was pretty normal practice to have somebody put their arm around you and just connect and mentor and guide. And by the way, they mentored before it became a weird word, right? Now it's just awkward, but it was just what you did. Fast forward to now, we have some communities that still do that, right? Like my first Airmen's Time, 24 Special Tactics Squadron, we used to muster all the time. We'd come together, you PT, you muster up, you know what everybody's doing, and you roll out. Like, that was Airmen's Time. I took that with me when I went to, you know, flight records at Ramstein. I used to put on we had a weekly schedule, and on the whiteboard, I'd put every Friday, 1500 group hug. Like, we were going to get together and just talk. Sometimes we talked about what we're doing that weekend. Sometimes we talked about training. Sometimes we talked about how can we, you know, have better TTPs, whatever it is, career training, whatever it is. We just set aside time. And oh, by the way, you don't have to shut your doors either. We didn't ever shut our doors, you know, and tell you guys, hey, we can't take your jump record or your flight record, right? Like, you can still do those things within your formation. You just have to figure it out. But in any case, you can't be there as a team, and you can't have unit cohesion if you never just take a pause and actually have some Airmen's Time. And Airmen's Time might also be that, hey, I actually have a cajillion CBTs to do, right? Like, so as an NCO, I probably need to just take care of that so that I can focus on the other things that I need to do. You know, whatever it is, we gave some right and left boundaries, and are encouraging our NCOs, our CGOs, FGOs, like, they've got to figure out what that is in their formations.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Chief Bass, I love how you started that off, because I'll tell you what, there's only two things we hate in the military, Chief. It's the status quo and any change. So I'm glad that you found a good spot in between there. Now, and you know, some communities do. We inherently understand this, and I'm glad that you brought up that reflection from your time at the 2-4. But it's the same exact thing with us. We're like, oh, Airmen's Time. We read that memo inside of the Spec War community. We're like, oh yeah, no, we got that. Yeah, this is me pulling you aside after a training event. This is, you know, hey, we're gonna debrief. What I want everybody to do is, you know, hey, the beer light's on. You're going to grab your single beverage of choice. We're going to end this Friday on a good note as a squadron, as a culture, as a community. We know what Airmen's Time is. So for us, we inherently understood it. So it was funny watching people that would, you know, that kind of had that initial, let's call it resistance. This isn't a normal One's Ready podcast, so I can't say what I normally would about how I feel about, you know, those people that are resistant to that change. But what I will say is, you know, people miss the forest for the trees on this one. This is intrusive leadership. This is getting back to what a tribe is. This is getting back to taking that young airman as a staff sergeant saying, hey, clip into me. I'm going to show you the kind of the ropes on this one, and we're going to walk through. So some communities totally got it. And then some communities are a little bit lagging. But what I'm hearing from you is this is just an opportunity. You're providing the space. You're providing that top cover for those people to lead how you want. You're not telling anybody to lead a specific way. You're saying, hey, here's the top cover. What are you doing? I'm doing Airmen's Time. It's Chief Bass Initiative. This is how we're going to go forward. Like, this is something that I want to do to make myself and my organization better. I think if people looked at it like that, it would be a little bit better, for them at least.
I agree. And some of the memo was really that top cover you're talking about from myself and the chief of staff to remind our leaders, right? Our wing, group, squadron leaders to make sure they provide those opportunities for their folks. That's all it is, right? If you look at the Army, they have a thing called Sergeant's Time. That is part of their battle rhythm. One Thursday a month or whenever it is, but it's also in their training, calendar. So again, how leaders want to do it, it's providing top cover for leaders to encourage Airmen's Time at the lowest level. Hey, I will tell you, I was having breakfast with some junior airmen out at Ellsworth last week. And we talked about this there. And they were like, hey, we actually love the concept of Airmen's Time, but we don't think that everybody, right, kind of knows how to do it. And so they feel like it's a bunch of old people trying to just like share stories of 1990, right? And I said, here's the beauty of that. I said, this is Airmen's Time. I said, you should be sharing with your supervisors, hey, we love this, but we actually kind of want to talk about this, right? Like, tell us you don't want to hear the stories from 1990s or 2000s, right? Like, but this is, just time together. I said, so you need to take that back to your NCO and say, hey, we'd actually like to talk about X, Y, and Z. And then I talked to them about how I'm a big fan of reverse mentoring. I actually learn more spending time with our more junior troops than I do sometimes, anybody else. I just want to get their feedback and their thought process, which then leads to generational, the differences of generations that are serving.
Yeah. And that's, it bothers me. And I know it bothers Aaron because we've talked about it numerous times, like the generational gap and how people are like, oh, this new generation. But if you actually take the time to sit down and speak with them, they're smarter than we were, generally more physically fit than we were. And they know, or they have solutions to problems that we are so stuck in our ways and, oh, well, that's the way it's always been done, that if we actually just take a step back and almost hands off, like, dude, you got a way to solve this? Go for it. Things will be better. Like, we've got to get out of this mentality of like, oh, this new generation, because they're fantastic. They really are. We just got to get out of their way. And that's the biggest thing. Is like, when I ask them, how can I help you? How can I do that? Really, I just want them to say, just get out of my way and let me succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. And provide them the tools that they need. I think I'll be honest, Peaches, that's probably sometimes the most challenging part of leadership, especially kind of where we are right now at this inflection point. Our airmen are ready to get after it, but because of some challenges that we don't 100% control, it's really tough to be able to provide all, our airmen, like, here's all the tools that you need to succeed, right? Like, Joe Bass does not control this budget that we get, in the military. Like, I know people think that I do, right? Like, when we have to make some tough decisions on budget, right? They're like, oh, General Brown, Chief Bass, they don't care. No, we care. We have to make some tough decisions, but we fundamentally feel like our roles as leaders is to give them the things that they need to succeed, like basic internet that works, right? And an AFNet that works, and a computer system that works. Like it pains me to hear when I talk to our airmen coming out of cyber training at tech training, right? Like, and how woefully behind we are. Like, that those are basic necessities that we owe our airmen. So just know that when you're saying like they just want us to give them what they need and get out of it, and as a leader, it frustrates us sometimes when we aren't able to do that because of things outside of our control.
Absolutely. So, Chief, what are there some things that are going on in the background? Maybe increases in housing allowance? Are there some other inventive programs that we're moving some things around in order to kind of combat that? Because the world is crazy, right? I don't know if do you have a news app on your phone? Do you look at the news any given day? Because, Chief, stuff is wild at this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it gets wild like every day. Like every day I wake up and I'm like, what's about to happen like today?
What happened today? I look at the announcements on my phone, and some days I'm like, I could never imagine that. If I wrote that 10 years ago, you would have me committed. You'd be like, Aaron, it's time to come off jump status. I don't know where you're getting these crazy ideas, but it's daily now. And it's just the weirdest thing. And I know that, we all feel it as a force. We feel it. And some of us that are a little bit older, we've had, a couple reps at dealing with wacky things before. We're a little bit, more even keel, but you can definitely see the impact, E5 and below of just the world, and they're involved in a very scary time. So, are we doing anything as a force to kind of circle the wagons a little bit and give some breathing room to those people? Okay.
We are. That's why, I talk about, again, control what you can control. Be aggressive with what we can control and demanding and assertive. And then for all those other things, we have to be aggressively influential on the things that we don't control. And so when I say that, what I mean is, like, as a service, there are certain levers that we can pull that can hopefully help our airmen and their families. Like, that is of our concern all the time. The challenge is the things that are happening right now that are impacting our families the most: inflation, food costs, gas prices, housing costs. We can't control that as a Department of Defense, nor can we control it as a service. And it's gut-wrenching, right? Like, every single person in our nation is impacted by this. But the message that I'm sharing with our elected officials is, and anybody who will listen to me, our community partners, our elected officials, is, but your service members are impacted more. Because they don't have choice when we tag them to move, like Peaches, you just moved, right? Like, who knows, if you were able to find a place or not. And I'm hearing all of these stories about our airmen who are putting in application fees for rentals, and they don't get those application fees back, and they're just spending a ton of money on that, and they're being outbid for homes, and we don't have enough homes on base, and TLE costs and TLF costs. I mean, it is just challenging. So what can we control as a service? There are some things. And so we have made some adjustments to TLE length, allowing at the appropriate level our commanders to be able to extend TLE, because people are not going to be able to find a house typically in the 10 days or however long that they have. And so we're granting those authorities. The other thing that we did is, for those who are able to get a place on base, you should never, if you have to stay on base, let's say, however long you stay, you will have a prorated amount of your BAH. You should never come out paying more than your BAH in TLF costs for PCS. And so we've made those adjustments. If your base is still having those challenges, I need you to run that up the flagpole to the A1. But that is one of the things. Things that we are aggressively influencing and pursuing is a complete change to the way we assess BAH, COLA, OHA, all of those things. We have an old draconian model of, take a survey every 1 or 2 years and make adjustments. It's 2022. We have the ability to use artificial intelligence and other things to be able to maybe do a quarterly assessment. And again, right, it's easy for me to kind of point fingers at folks outside of the service, but I appreciate what they do, but it's 2022 and we need to have a better way to be able to assess that stuff. So we're pushing hard on that. That's kind of the 200-meter target to help fix the overall. The 50-meter target is how do we provide some relief today for those who are PCSing today. So we are pushing for a relook of BAH. We are absolutely taking a look at what is going on with COLA, the loss of COLA at some of our locations in USAFE and PACAF, and we're trying to make an influence there because, again, those COLA surveys were done last year time frame, and they're about to go in effect 1 June. A lot has happened between fall and June. And then, we're trying to look at, can we get increases in BAS? Can we get increases here? So we're looking at that. I will tell you, it's easier said than done. When we start talking about increases, we're talking about not just increases for airmen. We're talking about increases for every service member under the DOD. That is huge, right? And to some degree, the challenge that OSD has is trying to not make knee-jerk reactions that, and oh, by the way, the DOD doesn't have this budget that just never ends. So this is these are big world problems that we're trying to get after, but we're trying to get after the things that we can control. I will tell you the other thing, the one important thing, you have to escalate up the chain of command if you are having big time issues, because we can also push and slide PCS RNLTDs. That should be probably the last resort. But guess what? I would rather slide or slip a RNLTD than for an airman to be coming out of their pocket thousands of dollars that they can't afford.
Yep. That's great to hear. And one of the programs that I'm dealing with I say dealing with right now, since I just PCS'd, is the Exceptional Family Member Program. When I had PCS from MacDill Air Force Base in 2020, it was a different program. It would take 6 weeks to get your clearance and that kind of stuff. But now that we've switched to this new program, I mean, it's the timeline is extended significantly. And I'm not sure if you're tracking or not, but the timeline is extended significantly. And I just learned this, but they are basing everything off of the report no later than date versus what the report date is. So I had submitted my application, the application for the process, but it hadn't even been submitted yet because they were going off of my July report no later than versus my actual report date, which was May. So the team, and I won't mention their name, but the EF&P coordinator at AFPC really helped me out, plus the one here at Nellis. So kudos to them. But at the same time, is there anything being done? Because there's a lot of exceptional family member airmen in our force. Yeah.
I'm glad that they were able to help you out, Peaches, right? And I know everybody's a good American, so everybody's trying to, but I need everybody to help out every airman. And so that's where I get to. There are a lot of things being done to help that centralized cell that we believe, at some point will be better off being centralized. So last September, they were not centralized. A lot of work fell on the member, the EF&P family themselves, and everybody else. They centralized everything into one cell at AFPC so that 90% of the work ended up being put on that cell and 10% on the member themselves. They are also, what was the challenge last year and even still impacting us now, is they changed in a different system in September. And because of a change of system, because of a change of processes, it just piled up where all of a sudden you're backlogged, right? And so starting in probably December timeframe when the warning orders came out, we were like, there's a huge problem here. So what did we do? We started to fund them with overhire so that they can start to chip at this backlog that they have. Right now, that cell has about 60 people. That seems like a lot, but a lot of them are doctors, nurses, and assignment handlers, if you will, and none of this is easy. So about 10% of the force is EF&P families. Those EF&P families, it's not a one size fits all, right? They all have different things. So I was EF&P family because my daughter had speech classes, right? And so I had try to get the speech person, to say like my daughter can go to Germany. It's not going to be a big deal, right? Like, so, but that was some things that they had there. But then you have a family member who might have 4 dependents, and their 4 dependents see 4 different providers off base. Those things clog things up. So it's extremely challenging, the work that they're doing down there. I actually went and saw them last week, by the way. And I spent time looking at the assignment handlers. And so what I would share with like all of our airmen, like, don't beat the assignment handlers up, right? They are the ones who take the heat. But they're not making the decisions, right? These are either medical or educational, folks that are SMEs that are having to make these decisions. They've got a triage program that's supposed to be better, but I'm hearing it's not. So I appreciate the feedback because I need to hear this. The triage program is easy FMP issues, a little bit more challenging, super challenging. Those easy ones should be breezing through. Like if you are an easy, like that should be fairly quick. They're going to get after it. They owe me some things based on our discussions last week. Again, we're deeply concerned about it because it's just a ripple effect. If you don't get your clearance for your family, I mean, it causes just a ripple effect to include the hardship. So we've got a lot of work to do still.
Awesome. And really I appreciate that you guys are working on that.
I appreciate that you just sold out whatever AFMP team you're talking to the CMSAF on the podcast. Like that's my favorite part of that whole thing.
Hey, I made it a good sandwich. I said, hey, they did great things. They really helped me out. I wasn't going to dime anybody out in terms of their name, but like they really did do a good job. I brought the issue up to them and they were like, hey, got it, man. This is why it hadn't been submitted yet. Cause we do it. They explained the process to me. I was like, great, but here's the situation. They're like, we got you. We'll knock it out. And I'm like, but you're right, CMSAF. Like they're all good airmen. They're good Americans that just want to help. And I hate it because, I'm out processing at JBLM and I go to my final out and they're like, hey man, you ain't cleared. You ain't leaving. I was like, well, the moving truck just pulled out. So
I got good news and I got bad news.
I feel bad for her, and I won't say her first name, but Sergeant Goodwin, like she is in the trenches, just taking spears, and for me, and you could tell she came out, and she's like, Chief, I got bad news, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. We'll work through it. Through it. But I can't imagine, like, there's somebody in there that's just giving it to her, and it's like, I hate that for them.
People are giving it to her. Here's what I'll tell you. Remember, I always talk about leadership and leadership responsibilities. Not everybody's going to be able to get squared away like peaches, right? So, for our senior airmen, staff sergeants, tech sergeants who feel like they don't have any advocacy, again, your squadron leadership team helps work for you. Like when I was a squadron SCL, if I knew I had somebody that was challenged with this and they didn't share it with me, I'd actually be pretty upset, right? Like, let me help work for you. So take those challenges that you're having, give it to your SCL, give it to your first sergeant, let them reach out to AFPC. You can certainly do that to yourself, as any airman can do that. But if you feel like you're just getting the runaround, you need some assistance, take that up your chain of command. That's what your chain of command is supposed to do.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and it seems weird to focus on these things, but from your 29 years in now, and Chief Peaches, you've been in 22 or 23 at this point. We understand that these things inherently affect the no kidding tactical level, right? We have conflict in Ukraine right now that's going on. We thought we were going to have a little bit of break after we got out of Afghanistan. That's just not the case. So, Chief, I wanted to ask you, looking at the forward operating environment and what we're going to ask our multi-capable airmen to do, how dynamic do you think that environment is? I think I already know the answer on this one because I can feel it too. But what are some things from your level that you're really like this is a warning sign and we need to get after it?
Yeah. So many. I honestly wish I had a GoPro on me and you all could see the sense of urgency that is here in this building that I work in. More than ever before. you hear senior leaders talk about it, and they're serious when they say we are at an inflection point in history, that we really have to be thoughtful of why we wear our nation's cloth more than ever. Like 29 years ago, I tell people all the time, I came in, get my GI Bill and roll out, right? It wasn't that serious. Today, every single airman that wears this uniform, right? Like it's got to mean something. And that doesn't mean you have to serve 20 years. If you're serving 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, doesn't matter. You've got to take this serious, because we're at an inflection point where we have strategic competitors who, quite frankly, want to kick our ass. And everybody has to know that. The community that probably listens to your podcast is already tracking that. But I'll tell you, as we go up in classification on what our adversaries' capabilities are, like, it gets worse. And it can be depressing as hell, which is why there is a sense of urgency in this building to make sure that we can be the Air Force that our nation needs when called upon. No other service, with the exception of Space Force, is every service dependent on to be able to execute their missions, right? Like, you can't do anything without air. And so to that point, we also have to appreciate that future warfare will never look like it did in the past. If we think it's going to look like Band of Brothers, right, like that is pretty unlikely. And oh, by the way, as our adversaries have been paying attention to us and watching us for the past 30 years, they're never going to fight a fair fight, ever. And so, I tell people all the time, they're not interested in beating the United States Air Force. Like, they're interested in beating the nation. And if they can do that, especially without expending a bullet, they win. And so this thing called information and cyber and space, those domains are domains that we cannot lose in. If we lose in cyber, like, we lose, period. We can't even generate air power. If we lose in space, we lose, period. If we lose in information, and I'll tell you, information is probably most concerning to me, because that's hearts and minds. That's, belief. That is applicable to all Americans. I'm concerned about those things, but I'll tell you, MCA, you bring up multi-capable airmen. I will tell you that one, like, my team sends me the memes. Like, I think they're pretty hilarious. They're funny. They're funny.
Fantastic.
Right? I'll share them sometimes. Yeah. If you see a meme out there, it's because I was like, I want to share this. Like, it's pretty dumb. So, we are.
So yes, everybody, Chief Bass sees the memes. That doesn't mean make more. It means get better at making your memes. Everybody, Chief, I just had to get that one for you.
Yeah, don't make more unless they're good. So, but here's the deal: we're making multi-capable airmen way too complicated. If you are special operations, you're probably multi-capable. If you have worked in a CRG or a CRW, you are multi-capable. If you are a guard or a reservist, you are multi-capable. It is more about mindset than it is about checking a block. When I was a 1 Charlie, again, 2-4 STS, 1 Charlie, dude, I was doing like 2T work as a 1 Charlie. I remember picking you guys up out of a lake, like on a boat, right? Like, that's not what 1 Charlies do, but you do whatever you need to do. And so as we've been wargaming this, by the way, that's what they do in this building as they're looking at, 2030, 2035, 2040, how do we make sure our joint force is prepared for any of that? What we came back with is we've got to have agile combat employment. It's a scheme of maneuver that cannot be lost on us, and we need to be able to roll out in small team concepts. And oh, by the way, we're not going to have the luxury of being able to take 200 people with us. So how do we get after that? And that's really kind of the foundation of where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of get stuck with these monikers, right? When we talk about, Airmen's Time, multi-capable, our mind goes ahead and puts a kind of a structure on it instead of like open it up. It can be all kinds of stuff, and we've already been doing the MCA stuff for years now. And some jobs, you nailed it. Some jobs are inherently that way. I do think that we as Americans, we think in four-year increments, typically with administrations and stuff like that. Whereas, our competitors that are out there, they're thinking 100-year game, like very, very long term. And so we've got to get past that 4-year increments that our minds are just in, because we can't really, we're almost starting and stopping things as we're going, instead of like, hey, this is something I'm going to work. I may not see the benefits of that, but it's okay, because it benefits the force and it benefits the nation as a whole.
Agree. Hey, so since you brought up 100-year game, hopefully, most of your audience has already read 100-Year Marathon, right? Like, phenomenal book that will really kind of give a strong foundation of the things that are going on in China and the PRC. But I would encourage anybody to read that book. I tell our airmen all the time, like, everybody needs to know this, right? China's laid down what's at stake. And they basically told us 2049, they're going to take their rightful stand as a world dominant power because they're tired of living in a century of humiliation. Every airman needs to understand that. What they also need to understand is, if you talk to your intel folks, they'll probably tell you they're about 15 to 20 years ahead of time. So if you do the math, we're talking 2029. Like, we need airmen to understand that, which again gets back to the information, cyberspace domains that I'm extremely concerned about, especially information. So I love that you're using your platform to push out good, to educate the force, because that's important. There is more that binds us together than apart.
Absolutely. And speaking specifically to those people that are getting ready to come in, that are going to put on that cloth of their nation, Chief Bass, if you could build that multi-capable airman, if you could talk directly to that 18-year-old right now, and you say, hey, these are the traits I want you to have. This is what I want you to be to come in, because this is who we're going to need 20 years from now and not just today. What does that person look like to you?
I think that person is persistent, innovative, a critical thinker, somebody who can communicate well, verbally, written, digitally, all of those things. And a person who is open-minded and values the strengths of their teammates.
Easy.
Solid.
Walk off. Yeah, it's like you had that prepared, Chief. Good job.
I did it. I was looking for notes. I'm like, crap, I should have something like this written down somewhere. I didn't have anything.
That's right, because we didn't give it to you to read ahead either.
It's okay. That was. I'm sure I'll have to talk to your staff after this, but I've been talked to before. You know what I mean? So
it's all good.
You've been chewed out before, believe me.
I've been chewed out before. Yeah.
Hey, that doesn't stop where you're at. Just so you know.
Thank goodness.
No,
Good.
I'm waiting for it now. I can just check in the Nellis, and now that I'm good to go, I'll check in the Nellis, and I'm sure I'll get my ass chewed for something.
Yeah.
So, one of the questions that Trent couldn't make it. His wife just redeployed. So they're reintegrating and that kind of stuff, which is great. So we're giving him that off time for right now. But, one of the things that he wanted to ask is he wanted to know if you were actually secretly having, meetings with the E4 Mafia, because the E4 Mafia is one of the strongest organizations within the Air Force. And also some of the most innovative folks as well. So are you having like secret E4 Mafia meetings at your time at the Pentagon?
So if I told you, Trent, then it wouldn't be a secret.
I love that she tells the special reconnaissance guide, like, that's not how secrets work, Trent. This is fantastic.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, right? Like, it's no secret that I'm a big fan of reverse mentoring. I'm also pretty old school, right? I feel like you can learn from anybody. I mean, when I say, like, I love to learn from our most junior people, but I'm also not too proud to ever learn from our most senior people. And so I reach out to former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force because I want to get their counsel. I want to understand the historicals and why decisions were made. But I reach out to everybody. And I think, that's a sign of a, strong leader when you're willing to say, hey, like, let me understand all the information and then let's make some decisions. So, so I can't tell you, Trent, but just know that I value the opinions of those.
Awesome. Well, Chief, we want to be respectful of your time. Know that you have many, many other meetings on a Monday morning. So really appreciate you joining us. For everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time, Chief.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.